A busy weekend for Jeff Paterson and the RinkWide crew as they had 2 games to stick handle and 2 trades on a Friday night. He joins us now. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, guys.
We'll do it in piecemeal form. So the Miller trade drops.
This is the trade section. Then we'll do the game
trade section
Okay.
then the game section, and then the looking forward section. The JT Miller trade drops, and your reaction to it is what?
Yeah, not shocked, obviously, with all the smoke that had been around JT and the New York Rangers. And so, did I expect it in the hours leading up to the final game of a road trip? Maybe not, but look, nothing gets people talking like trades. We saw that the numbers of our shows and the emergency shows you guys did over the weekend reflects it. City is still buzzing. I think everybody's still trying to make sense of exactly what went down and how it all went down and how does it affect the hockey club short-term and long-term. But I don't think anybody ever expected that the Canucks were going to outright win a trade involving JT Miller because he controlled the process. So for them to get Philip Hedl and to get a promising young defenseman, and I think the first rounder was the centerpiece there, and pretty clearly they had discussions from Pittsburgh, getting feelers or putting feelers out to know what the price was going to be to acquire Marcus Pettersson. So the deals, while separate, didn't happen in isolation, and so maybe the biggest surprise for me was late on a Friday night that the first rounder they acquired from the Rangers lasted, 2 hours?
Yeah.
When they got one for Bo Horvat, it was 30 days at the very least. Here it felt like 30 minutes, and poof, it was gone and on to trade number 2.
How did you feel about trade number 2?
Well, that was funny because as we were signing off RinkWide, and then there was this sort of cryptic text or tweet from Elliot Friedman, like, hang on, Canucks may not be done here on a Friday night. So, we're trying to steer a live stream show and not only gather the intel on what was going on, but process it in real time. It's difficult because at first you're hearing that they're acquiring Marcus Pettersson. You know that he's an unrestricted free agent, so what's the cost there? And then, you're hearing other pieces involved in both directions. And so it took a while, ultimately, for all of the dust to settle there. And again, Patrick Johnson and I were on the air, so you don't really get a whole lot of time to sort of step back and digest it. Pettersson was a guy that they had been attached to and certainly had kicked tires on for a while, so not surprised. You saw the quotes afterwards. Jim Rutherford sort of patting his own back that it's the second time that he's acquired this player and he really likes him. And that much is obvious. But now it's, can they sign him and at what cost there? So even though the trades went down this weekend, this trade story isn't officially over because we need to know the cost, the long-term cost for Marcus Pettersson. But based on one night, came as advertised. I thought he looked pretty good. I thought Philip Hedl looked pretty good. I know we'll talk more about the game, but look, this guy slots in very certainly as the number 3 behind Quinn Hughes and Filip Hronek, and you can start to see the vision of this management group that there's 3 guys in their 20s that form sort of the nucleus of a defense core that they think can start to move them in the right direction. We know that the defense as assembled this season has been a weakness, not good enough at an NHL level. So, a welcome addition in that regard. And now it's a question of how do you go about filling out? You got 3, but you need 6 on a nightly basis. How do you get from here to there?
So Patrick Alvin was asked this question on Saturday, and I'm going to effectively ask you the same thing. After the 2 weekend trades, are the Canucks a better team? How do you feel, Jeff?
Skill-wise, no. You don't replace JT Miller when he's at the top of his game. But as we know, and we all watched, he wasn't anywhere close to that all season long here in Vancouver. Still, he's a better player than he showed for the 45 games or whatever it was that they got out of him this season. And I was glad to see that he got off to a quick start in New York. I do hope that he's able to. I mean, when he's on, he's one of the most engaging players in the NHL to watch. There aren't many JT Millers around. So they're going to miss him. They'll miss him in all situations. They're certainly going to miss him in faceoffs. They're going to be the fire and the passion that he brought. And the piece that I wrote at Canucks Army over the weekend was about his complicated legacy. And I said, really, we may not know the full legacy until this team gets back to the playoffs, because hopefully some of the other guys watched and learned from JT Miller that that's what it takes to get your game to that level at playoff time. And ultimately, they're going to miss a lot of what he brought when he was dialed in. So skill-wise, no. But defensively, yeah, they're probably a little bit better. And I think on balance here, the hope has to be subtraction of JT Miller and the black cloud that hovered over this group all season long, that they have paved a path forward here, and maybe that can allow others, Elias Pettersson, the original, but others as well, to flourish and find their game. And what a world when you have to distinguish between all of the Petterssons that now call Vancouver home.
10 games until the trade deadline. That's not that many games. How many of those games do they wait before deciding if there is another deal? And I don't think they're trading Elias Pettersson, but they do have cap space to theoretically spend futures on, maybe move the deck chairs around and get a second line center. Do you think they wait to see how Hedl does in that role? Do you think it's just a matter of time they're going to continue to fish? What do the next 10 games bring for the Vancouver Canucks?
Well, it's funny you mentioned 10 games, because as I sat there yesterday watching the Red Wings game and recognized that it's game 52, you do the math. There's only 30 games to go in the regular season. Like, it doesn't feel to me like we should be that close to the end of the year, and 30 is still a significant portion, but 52 down, 30 to go, and 10 of them, as you said, up until the trade deadline. I have to think organizationally that the plan is now to try to get EP40 up and running and cooking for the remainder of this season. I don't see him moving before the trade deadline. And I really hope that the Canucks make it to the playoffs, because the playoffs are fun. They're great for the city. They're great for what we do in this business. And ultimately, they are the great determining factor of where guys are in their ability to elevate their games and make players around them better. And we know that that just didn't happen for EP40 in the playoffs last year. So I want this management group to have a broader resume to examine Elias Pettersson in the playoffs. And I think, it would be organizationally, it'd be a catastrophe if this group falls short, but they are below the playoff bar with 30 games to go. And I think the Calgary Flames made themselves a little bit better with their trades last week. And so, where does it go from here? We'll find out. But I do wonder, Rutherford and Alvin were so active on the trade front a year ago. They'd been relatively quiet since the Eric Brandstrom deal on the eve of the season. Do they think they've got their mojo back? Do they have their swagger? Did they strut into Rogers Arena this morning and say, hey, that was fun. Let's keep this going. So I don't think they're satisfied. I think that was one of my takeaways again from Patrick Alvin. And yes, he sort of waffled on the question about, are they better? All of a sudden, now they have a little bit of a surplus on the back end. The Carson Soucy healthy scratch, to me, is fascinating. That wasn't a trade chip or a trade piece that I necessarily had considered prior to this, but DPD looked pretty good and has in his 3 appearances so far. You got Derek Forbert as well. Like, all of a sudden, there's a logjam on the left side with Marcus Pettersson here. Carson Soucy can slide to the right, but do you want to be paying $3.25 for a third pairing defenseman, even if the cap is going up? So I just wonder, was this a one-off? Is that going to be enough to snap him to attention and raise his game? Or ultimately, are the Vancouver Canucks looking to perhaps move on from Carson Soucy sooner than anybody really had thought they might be?
Yeah, because they move on mistakes quickly, as Danton Heinen, Vincent Desharnais, Daniel Sprong, and others can attest. And also, like, Jeff, in a game where Hughes was scratched.
Right.
He scratched Carson Soucy. Like,
and,
that was...
And a big strapping defenseman at the trade deadline, guys. As we know, boy, do GMs love them some big strapping defensemen at the trade deadline. So if you are thinking about trading Carson Soucy, it would have to be something else in addition. But Soucy and a first... Does that start to get you a second line center?
Let's not forget, they gave him a full no trade clause.
Right, and that is an important piece of the puzzle. But as we've seen, if he's going to be a spare part here and not playing and get bumped further down the depth chart, does he look for an opportunity elsewhere? So you're right.
He's only got the 1 year left. He's only got the 1 year left, and he'd like to earn one more contract, and it's hard to earn one more contract when you're not playing.
For me, the best case scenario here is that he recognizes he hasn't been good enough, takes this like the pro that he is, and slides over to the right side. Like, be better than Noah Juleson at the very least, even as a left-handed shot. I know they like their lefty-righties, but I think there is room for Carson Soucy here, but it may not be on the left side.
Yep.
And I'm okay with that if he's okay with that, but ultimately... it's on him now. The coach didn't just scratch him. He pretty much carved him after the game as well and said, like, this is a guy that we need to be a whole lot better. And And they do. It's been an off year. It's been a weird year for him because last year we didn't talk about him much because he just showed up, kept quiet, did his job, did it effectively. And boy, year over year, when we talk about it hasn't been the same for so many guys last year, mostly that conversation is about offensive players, but it has not been the same defensively for Carson Soucy.
I'm with you about sliding him over to the third pair right side. I also should know, I know we're all drunk on DPD today, but young players will probably have some step backs as this goes forward. I'm not sure he is absolutely an every night regular just yet, plus the injury factor, and we're seeing that with Quinn Hughes. So I still think he can be a serviceable piece for the Vancouver Canucks. I think Tocchet picked a most interesting time to healthy scratch because he really put it in lights, as you say, Jeff, after the game and because of Quinn Hughes' absence.
It should be noted, too, Carson Soucy turns into a 12-team no-trade list on July 1st. So if you're Patrick Allvin, you could go up to him and say, listen, we're going to trade you in the summer anyhow. Would you like to give us the 12-team no-trade now, and we'll work off that going to the trade deadline.
Yeah. Or you just keep him around because you think you're making a playoff run and he's depth and familiar with the system.
And he's a good guy to have in the playoffs. I'm not a Soucy hater at all, to a strong degree, but you got to trade something to get something, right?
And Jeff's absolutely right. The pro that he is, he has been a pro here.
No,
Jeff, I couldn't help but notice, but we had forwards, most specifically Filipino. We had forwards at speed with the puck on their stick.
Honestly,
entering
tears
the
of joy.
offensive
Tears of
zone
joy. Yes.
last night, Jeff. Filipino was like teaching a class, a lesson on how this is done last night, and the coach was talking about it in the aftermath. The Canucks as a pacey rush team, Jeff, a moment or two, because it has been too long since we've been able to talk about this element of the game.
Yeah, and it's noticeable. And I think part of that is that the baseline was pretty low. So you bring in a guy that can move about the ice, and Drew O'Connor as well. And actually, I thought in the first period, noticed O'Connor and his speed and his willingness to get in on the forecheck and the work that he did. Didn't figure in the first goal, but played a role in it certainly to get in and pressure Alex Lyon, the Detroit goaltender. So I know that Tocchet had high praise for O'Connor as well, limited role, but flanking Kiefer Sherwood, a couple of guys that aren't afraid to get in on the forecheck and hound some pucks. So maybe want to see more of that. I think a lot of us thought that a combination of Kiefer Sherwood and Dakota Joshua at some point this season would be intriguing, but boy, and we don't have to spend too much time, but it's tough to watch Dakota Joshua these days. Coming off his second lengthy absence, and you just wonder if he's going to launch at all this season or if it's going to take a full summer and get back. But on Heedle's front, you're right. It was fun. Like, there were a couple of rushes that you could see developing as he picked up the puck in the neutral zone and thought, hey, he's not going to dump it in and chase after it. He's going to take it and go with it and control entry and those types of things. And then the play to get the goal. And look, I loved his celebration. Ultimately it's a 2-2 goal in game 52. But for this guy, first game after getting traded for the first time in his National Hockey League career, recognizing he's getting an opportunity to play higher and play more than he was in New York, up over 20 minutes on the night, and play into the crowd base or the fan base and the crowd afterwards. I love that. Like, why not? Ultimately, it's supposed to be entertainment. They haven't been terribly entertaining on home ice, so give the people what they want. And yes, we'll see if it changes the ultimate dynamic because in the end, it didn't change the outcome in overtime yet again. Seen that story way too many times this season. But a promising start. I thought promising start for all three of the new guys that, when I talked to Drew O'Connor on Sunday morning at the rink, he had this 10,000-mile stare. Like, if I had asked him what city he was in and what time and what day it was, I'm not sure he would have known the answer. And he said, I haven't even processed this, to be honest. Traded for the first time in his career. Said he got a phone call from Kyle Dubas at 11 o'clock on Friday night. And on Saturday morning, he's packing up his life and moving it to a new country and across the continent. And then on Sunday, he's playing. So he said he was going to play on instinct. And that's really all you can ask of these guys in the first night. There'll be time for systems here. But I think all of these new players acquired have to treat these games this week as a 4-game road trip. and then get to the Four Nations break and sort of decompress at that point. I know the Canucks didn't win, but individually, yeah, I think there were some things to like in the debuts of all three of those guys, but you can understand. And I just thought O'Connor was, he was honest. He was like, I haven't even processed it. I'm in Vancouver. Here I am. Let me play.
What'd you make of the deployment? Because I love that line, but it has an effect on the top six as well. What'd you make of just the lineup combinations in the game?
Wasn't surprised that Hedl was given that opportunity. It was a question of who was going to play on his wing, and it gets pretty thin on the wings as we've seen for much of this season. So no issues with Garland. I thought those two had some chemistry. Dakota Joshua, as I just said, it's a struggle for him. I thought maybe Höglander was going to get a chance to play, and maybe he will still there. Then you got Suter and... how does a guy go 23 games without scoring and then all of a sudden flip the switch and get 3 in his last 4? Like, where was Pius Suter for a 6-week stretch there? Better player than the numbers indicated, but good to see him contributing again here. So I didn't mind that. And then that left a fourth line of Teddy Bluger with Höglander and Karlsson. But of course, all roads and all conversations take you straight to the top of the lineup. And that was the disappointing night, or part of the night, while there were sort of these new presents to unwrap and we were all locked onto them. Same old for EP40 and his wingers. I thought it was a really tough night for Jake DeBrusk. Besser had the early opportunity, had the 3-on-1 that he whistled wide. And I didn't mind him holding on and shooting the puck in that situation. He had Forbert and Joshua. Those were his options to pass to. So of the three, I don't mind the fact that Brock elected to hold on, but hit the net, make the goalie make a save there.
He stand on the one right on the doorstep too, right? When he's fed right to the crease edge there, and he didn't get all of
opportunities there.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that game. Like, welcome to Vancouver, new guys. This is a team that can do some good things, but struggles to ultimately put the puck across the red line that matters the most. So good for Hedl for scoring, but even he said, the way they controlled the play, the underlying numbers, they dominated Detroit, and they should have. The Wings had played the night before, 3-4 for them at the end of a Western road trip. Canucks did a lot of good, but at the end of the night, did they win? No, they didn't. And so in that regard, their struggles continue here.
Okay, last question, Jeff, and it's a fastball here. Understand your exchange with Marcus Pettersson on his nickname fleshed out what we all probably suspected. Yeah, the Pens called him Petey. Can't be Petey here.
No,
apparently the play-by-play guy in Pittsburgh calls him Dragon or the Dragon, but of course we slay dragons at Rogers Arena. We don't house them. This is not the house of the dragon. This is the Dragon Slayers. So
right.
MP3, MPD, RePD, 3PD. Where are you at here on Marcus Pettersson's nickname?
Well, and of course, again, none of this is in a silo when you have two other guys with the same last name because. And I wasn't in the room afterwards, but apparently DPD was asked about all of this as well. And he said, well, somebody's come up with a new nickname for me, but I'm not going to tell you because I don't really like it. Did you catch Rick Tocchet drop a junior in his post-game press conference?
A junior?
And he corrected himself quickly, but I think he may have let the cat out of the bag a little bit that maybe they're going that way. I'm sort of with DPD on that one. I don't know that junior is necessarily... the best label
diminishing.
for him.
It's diminishing.
But it's not his son.
Yeah.
It was a fun exchange with Marcus Pettersson. The first few questions were about the trade and adjusting and everything else, and then there was sort of a break in the scrum, and so I just said, look, please tell me that your nickname is not Petey. And he just had this look of resignation as the truth sort of bubbled to the surface, and he was like, yeah, it is. Knowing full well that he was the second guy walking through that dressing room door with that nickname, and it probably wasn't going to work here. So, I'm fascinated and find it kind of amusing that and we got a hint on the road trip where, I guess in his debut at home against Washington, that DPD was going to get an E on his jersey. Now Marcus gets an M on his, but the OG is just Pettersson.
Just Pettersson.
So... it's confusing on that front as well.
The other name game is Vittorio Mancini. That's how he's listed on the Canucks website. Are we going Vittorio?
On the drive when cheers went up along Commercial Drive when they found out the Canucks had acquired Vittorio. Yes, and of course on the same day that Phil DiGiuseppe had cleared waivers and was sent back to Abbotsford.
Yeah,
so.
otherwise the all-Italian team, right? Di Giuseppe and Vittorio Mancini. Alas, only one.
And he's here. I wonder if they do want to get a look at him. He's played 15 games for the Rangers, and even though he doesn't project as an offensive guy, he got 5 points in his 15 NHL games. He thought it had gone really well. He liked his camp and said that he's made the most of his opportunities, but was shocked when he got traded. But I had a good chat with him yesterday, and we talked about this a little bit on RinkWide, but a really fascinating story that his father is fairly high up in USA Hockey on the development side, once worked for the Edmonton Oilers in player development. His dad coached the South African men's national ice hockey team. I didn't know that there was one, quite frankly, but the dad's had, an interesting coaching background. And so Victor, I think, is how we're going to go with Victor. But
I'm interested in his story. Like,
he played 2 years a junior in Sweden. You don't see many guys with junior eligibility going that way to play in their teen years, but he said that came through. I asked him about it yesterday, and he said that was through my dad, that he was friends with coaches over there, and after some discussion, they felt that was going to be the best path for him for his development, and then COVID hit, and looking for places to play, and he stuck with it. So 2 years of junior hockey over in Sweden before coming back in North America.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I know eventually the family got to Saginaw, Michigan, where there is a OHL team and a fair bit of hockey, but he's born in the Upper Peninsula, the UP of Michigan, this itty-bitty town, which is almost like a peninsula inside of the peninsula near Lake Superior. It is awfully snowy up there. It is very much like Canada. In fact, that could be our 11th province if this continues.
Oh, yeah.
The Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Anyways, looking forward to getting to know Vittorio Mancini a little bit more.
Let me just say this, that I shook hands with him, and he's one of those guys, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. Like, I wasn't sure I was getting my hand back.
Right. It just disappears.
Just enveloped. He just had the meatiest, biggest handshake. So he's a big dude. He is. And again, I think, not a throw in this deal. That Canucks need help on the right side. I think they see him as an intriguing prospect. And the fact that he's here, I do wonder, 3 games to go before the break. We talked about the issues on the right side. Do they plug him in and give him a look? I kind of hope they do. So we'll see where it goes for all of these new guys. But kind of a curious case with an interesting background when it comes to Victor Mancini.
Pat Quinn hands. Remember shaking
very
hands
much
with
yes.
the big Irishman?
Very much.
Just like, okay, where's my hand in there? Thanks, Jeff. Until next week, or until later this week.
All right, guys. Thanks.